Hi, my name is Sean Dillard, and I will be presenting my ecology project to you today. And the location that I have picked for my ecology project was over by our family farm. So you'll see some pictures of some edge and middle succession that we talked about on our ecology field trips. And so my first observation began Monday, October 9th. And I've got the temperature up here, 81 degrees, weather conditions sunny for that day. And so you'll notice while we're going through the slide, I will have the common name listed as well as the scientific name for these plants and trees. And so first, to start off, we have goldenrod. And so one thing we know about it is it's one of our edge species. The behavior is high amounts of pollen from this. And at this time of year, it is blooming, and it's a great food source for many ruminant species as its role in the environment. So another plant we have is another fall blooming plant, which is ironweed, and this is also another one that grows along the edge of succession. And I've got listed on there as well, blooms in the fall of the year. This is another plant that your ruminants will eat. Not something that they're going to prefer to eat, but they will if that's the only thing available to them. Another thing in this environment, we have redroot pigweed, another edge species, grows along all throughout the summer in your pasture fields. And so one thing about your redroot pigweed is you're going to see this plant mostly where you have grazing cattle. Where you feed hay at in the winter is mostly where this plant's going to take root. And so we've also got pokeweed growing in this environment. And so now we're getting into our mass-producing trees and bushes, which mass, like we went over, just means fruit or nut bearing. And this is going to grow along the forest as well. It's another edge species. Now we're going to get on into our trees a little bit, starting with magnolia. Now magnolia, one thing about this tree is it will not abort its leaves. It is an evergreen, and it's going to grow in your middle and edge succession. So like I said, this green leaf that I've got in my hand, you come back 2-3 months later, you're going to see the same results with this tree. Walnut, another thing we've got growing in this environment. So this is going to be getting on into our hardwoods. This is also an edge or a middle succession, another mass-producing tree. Okay, and then we've got white oak, big food source for our ruminants, especially deer. Like I said, another mass-producing tree. Acorns is what we're going to get off of our white oaks. It's a hardwood species. It's going to grow in your middle, and even in your, you're going to see it in your mature forest as well. And you can see I've got the picture of acorns over here, and another picture of the tree bark, as well as you can kind of see the leaves off of that. Another mass-producing tree, we've got hickory, another hardwood species. So another smokewood. Its role in the environment, big food source for your squirrels. So your hickory nuts, that's what they're mostly going to feed off of. So another tree we've got is your eastern red cedar. So an edge and a middle succession tree, and now this is a softwood, and it is also a mass producing. You can see the fruits off of the individual branches off of this cedar tree. Okay. Last thing I've got on here is poison ivy, and you can see over here the leaves and the vine are going to grow up with the tree after the frost. The poison ivy is going to abort its leaves, and you can kind of see the vine and the leaves of the poison ivy. This is the same white oak that I had a picture of earlier, and that was my first observation. So now we move on to the second observation, which I went back Friday, December the 1st. Temperature 60 degrees, and our weather condition was partly cloudy. So this was our abiotic factors. Okay, so I've got redroot, pigweed, goldenrod, ironweed all on one slide, and you can see what the effects after the frost of these. So these, especially your ironweed and goldenrod, we won't see these plants back until next fall. And even your red root pigweed won't see until spring and summertime. So that is the after effects of frost, what it has done to these trees, or these plants. Our magnolia, like I said, no change. These leaves are not aborted, and they will not change color because a magnolia is an evergreen. And so you can see I've went back, and these are the same leaves as what I had earlier in this PowerPoint. Okay, we've got pokeweed. We can see the individual fruit on this as well, and also see after effects of the frost on this. Again, we won't see this until spring or summertime of next year. It's already killed it off. And so our hickory, the hickory, walnut, and our white oaks are all going to abort their leaves. So I've got a picture of each one of those. Our hickory. Then there's our white oak and also our poison ivy. You can notice that it's already aborted its leaves as well. Okay. Our eastern red cedar was the only other plant organism that I observed with no change, just like the magnolia. So the magnolia and our red cedar was the only two organisms I've seen as far as plants goes, unchanged. So now we'll get into our animals in this habitat. One thing, as I mentioned earlier, we've got cattle grazing in the field. So they're going to mostly be feeding off in the summer your wild grasses and weeds. So your fescue, Johnson grass, and they will eat ironweed and goldenrod. They do not like to, but if that's all that is available to them, they will. And then of course they're going to be fed hay throughout the winter. Okay. So shelf fungi, probably the most interesting of the eukaryotes that I got a picture of. And so this is not a plant. The shelf fungi is not a plant because it is heterotrophic. Cannot make its own food. We'll find this in domain eukaryote and kingdom fungi. And you can see that's the picture of our shelf fungi. Okay. Another animal we've got running throughout the woods is we've got squirrels. I do not have a picture of them, but I've got a couple of squirrel nests. We're going to see, like I said earlier, feeding mostly off our hickory nuts. Behavior for them and your deer. This is your breeding seasons for your squirrels and your deer, which is fall and winter. Unlike cattle, they're seasonal breeders. So your cattle, where they're going to come into heat cycle year round, your squirrels and deer are going to be seasonal breeders, as well as the turkey that I'll have later on in this PowerPoint. And so next slide is the deer. I don't have a picture of that, but I have a picture of a rub here that I found in these woods. And they're going to feed mostly off your wild grasses and acorns. Their behavior, like I said, this is their mating season, their breeding season. So main time for breeding, especially my second observation. And so here's your turkey. I have a picture of a decoy here, not a live turkey, but a decoy. There are turkeys that live in this habitat though. Mostly feed off of your insects and wild grasses in your springtime, and then in your hickory nuts, acorns in the fall. They're also seasonal breeders. They're going to breed in the spring rather than the fall. And that is my presentation.